Today I'll be drawing Batman in 5 different styles. I wanted to do a style swap video, but I'm not very good at drawing other people's styles. So instead I'll be doing them with different mediums, and using that to give the drawings their own styles. And shout out to ADC Art Attack for this video idea. I nabbed it off of him and altered it slightly. It probably won't do much, but I've linked his channel in the description for credit. The mediums I'll be using today are charcoal pencils combined with graphite and colored pencils. Copic markers on their own, using only the warm gray, cold gray and black markers. Copic markers with colored pencils and some subtle fine liner work. And Copic markers with a fine liner for more of a cartoon style. Some of these combinations sound very similar, but I did my best to make sure each drawing was its own thing. So let's get drawing. I'm going to start with Robert Pattinson's Batman. I'll be drawing him with graphite and charcoal pencils, but I'll also be drawing the background with colored pencils to give it a splash of color. I wanted this one to seem moody and dark, but felt the colored background could add something interesting to it. I was a bit worried that it would look weird with the background being in color, but I really like how it ended up. The graphite pencils I'm using are actually part graphite part carbon. They are Staedtler Mars Lumograph Blacks. I've heard standard graphite doesn't mix very well with charcoal, so I was hoping these would do the trick. The combination didn't feel very easy at first, but I got used to it quite quick. As always, I used my mechanical erasers to help with the small highlights. This was a fun one to do. It's a really cool image, and I was able to get some great contrast. I like the solid black areas. You still need to pay attention to make sure you get them as consistently smooth as you can, but they are relatively quick and easy to do, and they really give it a lot of contrast. His suit had some smaller fiddly details, which was to be expected, but they weren't too small. Sometimes stuff like this can be really detailed and hard to manage, but I found them relatively easy to deal with here. The details on the top of his head were probably the hardest to do in this drawing. They were quite small and there were some fiddly highlights to add in as well. Onto his face details, and it's pretty standard. Building up skin tones, trying to make sure they're as dark as they need to be, and trying to get in the subtle tone changes. Now for the eyes, which were very easy to do, but really helped bring the drawing to life. All in all, this one was very relaxing to draw. I didn't really have any serious issues with it. Now I just finish up his shoulder before moving on to the second half of the background. And here's the finished drawing. The solid dark tones are a little patchy in places under certain lighting. But I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. I like the moody look it has, and I think the mix of the color and the black and white work really well together. Next up we have Ben Affleck as Batman. This is a great image and I've wanted to draw it for a while. I'm going to be doing this one with Copic markers, using cool grays for Batman, and warm grays for the background to help differentiate between the two parts of the drawing. I had difficulties with the side of his mask. I haven't used Copics in ages and this feels very tricky. I maybe should have done some proper practice first. But I wanted to dive right in. There are a lot of details here that are going to be very difficult to draw, so I'm just gonna have to try my best and hope it goes well. I'm tempted to use pencils with this for extra details, but I told myself I wouldn't. So I'm sticking it out and trying my best. So I've finished the first half of the detailed area of his mask, and it actually went really well. As I move on to the lower left corner it's starting to feel difficult. I end up having some problems with the paper throughout this drawing. I don't think the paper's bad, but it reacts differently to what I'm used to, and I'm having trouble getting the best out of it. I had some issues with the solid black area around his neck, but I think that was down to the tip on my black pen being older and a bit damaged. It ended up being a bit textured and it wasn't ideal. Maybe I should do a video all about learning to use Copic markers and how to take care of them properly. So I wasn't feeling very comfortable with the drawing at this point, but in hindsight the chin and mouth area went really well. I was terrified when drawing the exposed part of his face, but I think I managed nicely. The eye area goes quite simply. The paper's still feeling unusual to me, but I'm managing. Now on to the next big part of the head. I mark out the darker areas and details to avoid losing them once I put down the first layer of the lighter gray. People tend to suggest working from light to dark to avoid smudging, which makes a lot of sense. But for this area I wanted to make sure I kept track of all the little details. And some slightly messy smudges won't really damage this specific area of this drawing. They'd add to the scuffs and imperfections in his helmet, so I can get away with using the darker grays first. I think the top of the head and forehead area of this drawing end up being my favorite part of it, which is surprising because that's the bit I was worried about. I'm really proud of the smooth blending and the little details. The area around his second eye felt like one of the main problem areas. It's a bit hard to see on camera, but it ended up a little streaky, and almost looking like watercolor. I think I got lucky with these problems, because this image suits the way it ended up looking. His mask is wet from rain. It's scuffed and scratched. It's not supposed to be pristine and flawless. The streaky and slightly smudged look adds to the flawed element of it. I finish off the background and do the last little bit of his suit before adding some white gel pen highlights to make things pop. I panicked a lot when drawing this. It wasn't the most comfortable drawing I've ever done, and I never really felt like I clicked with the paper. But all in all, I'm very happy with the results. Now for the next drawing. This one is of Adam West's Batman. I'll be using Copic markers for this one as well, but with a few differences. I'll be using fine liners in some areas to help keep things neat, and I'll be using colored pencils over the top to add a bit of extra detail and vibrancy. I've used this combo a few times before. It's always been fun and I've loved the results. I wanted to make sure this one was really vibrant and fun. Adam West's Batman is such a polar opposite to the more recent portrayals, and the color and joy was always such an important part of it, so I was focusing a lot on that. This is the paper I usually use for Copic drawings. I'm used to it at this point and know how to get good results from it. It feels really nice and easy to use. I feel quite comfortable with this drawing. I've always found marker pens quite tense to use due to their permanent nature, but I'm enjoying this one already. I really like the textures and the look I got on the bottom part of his cowl. The flat black color with the smooth looking texture of the cloth is really nice. The top of his cowl was a bit difficult to do smoothly. I tried to do the best I could to get it simple but effective, knowing I can add more to it with pencils later. I'm really pleased with the area around the eye. The subtle greens really helped add something to it. The first eye hasn't quite got the right colors at the moment, but I'm more confident in my ability to add in the colors and details with pencils later than I am with marker pens. The other eye ends up in a similar situation later on as well. I lay down some basic details, leaving me free to work more intricately with pencils later on. I love the contrast of the vibrant colors and the flat black areas. I'm really enjoying this one. Moving on to the exposed part of his face. I have some issues here, but I was expecting it, to be honest. I had a feeling adding colored pencils on top would be really important and necessary here. The moment I get to the pencil stage I feel so much more relaxed. They are not as permanent as marker pens, so I can get more comfortable and not feel as tense. I struggle to get the same realism look I go for in most of my drawings, but I think the combination of the two ends up giving the drawing its own style. I'm really happy with the first eye, some subtle layers and details, and it's finished nice and quick. I don't cover the whole drawing with pencils, I just use it to try to neaten up some flaws and add some extra details and textures that I couldn't do precisely enough with the pens. Now we're at the face again. I try to use pencils to smooth out the hard edges. I add some more subtle color changes and finish off some other details. It's not perfect, but I'm happy with it. I think I did a good job of sorting out the top of his cowl as well. I was able to refine the shading and details and smooth out the harder edges like I did with the face. The second eye was the same as the first eye, it just needed some minor changes to finish it off. This was really fun to draw. I love the vibrant colors, the shiny textures, the fact that he had eyebrows painted on the cowl. I'm so happy with how this turned out. On to the last drawing. This one is an image of Batman from the animated series. I wanted to do this with just Copics and fine liners, but I added some pencils in the end for finer details. And I'll be using the same paper as the Affleck Batman image. I start by adding fine liner to the outline. I should really do more stuff with fine liners. I love how crisp and clean it looks. I left the bat signal with a pencil outline because I didn't want it to have the hard edge of a fine liner. I'll be honest. I wasn't thrilled with how this one turned out at first. But in hindsight it didn't go quite as badly as I thought. Maybe I messed up a bit because I thought it would be easy, and maybe that made me rush this drawing. But I just couldn't figure out how to get the best from the paper. And I felt like this one ended up looking a little sloppy and rough around the edges. I'm sure it's good paper, and I'll be doing more tests another time to figure out how to get the most out of it. But I personally just wasn't clicking with it. I managed to make a nice gradient with the blues for the sky, but I realized the lighter blues just weren't as dark as I wanted, so I darkened out the bottom part to fit the image better. I'm actually very happy with the face. It's incredibly simple, but it went well. I was also able to get a nice consistent flat black tone on his cowl. Although I did have some issues. It's hard to see on camera here, but for some reason the fine liner in some areas was darker than the black of my Copic marker, which wasn't ideal. I then came in with the colored pencils. I didn't want to do too much. I just wanted to neaten up the bat signal, add in the light effects, add some windows to the buildings, and add some subtle snowflakes throughout the image. The paper's specifically made for marker pens, so it doesn't have much tooth, which made pencils a little trickier to use. But I was able to get what I needed from it. All in all, this is my least favorite of these Batman drawings. It's not terrible, but one of the big things I love about the Batman animated series art style is how clean and sharp it is. So this one ending up a bit sloppy and unrefined isn't ideal. But it's also safe to say it's not as bad as I thought it was at the time. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so any little flaws I spot really get to me. But I think if I'm looking at this with no bias, it's not that bad. So there we have it. 4 drawings of Batman done in 4 different styles. I tried my best to give them all a different style and feel. And I think it worked out well. But the question is, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below which one you liked best. And remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and want to see more.